right. Well, thank you for those of you who were here or able to make it today. It wouldn't be soil and crop unless there was some kind of storm associated with it, is what I'm learning, or at least when I tend to speak about wireworms, there always seems to be some kind of major snowstorm. So thank you for coming and returning this afternoon, because I know there's other distractions out in the lobby, but I can only imagine that we'll hear it either way, the results of what's going on out there. So this afternoon, I was asked to come and talk about wireworms, a growing problem in PEI. Hopefully some of you can see me. I'm fine. I'm too short to be seen behind the monitor. So I can see this half of you, but I can't see that half of you. Anyways, so this is kind of a picture here, I guess, of some of the damage, some of the major damage that we're seeing in PEI. Of course, this doesn't include the corn crops or soybean or grains. You know, obviously we're having lots of issues there as well. But, you know, in the market after the fact, is there a pointer on this? Sorry, Suzanne.
There is, but you can press the middle button.
The middle button?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So this is, you know, this is some of the damage that we're seeing after the fact, right? You see here this wireworm with the hole in the carrot, and just this kind of surface stuff that you see, but it makes it unmarketable and waste. We've really seen an increase in the damage that we're seeing on the rutabagas in the province, and the other problem is that these holes also open up issues for secondary disease that can come in. And of course, the critters that are causing this are wireworms. Down here is just the picture of the click beetles, right? The adult forms. Okay, so as many of you know, we did a click beetle survey back in 2009. And what we wanted to do, because we've heard for the last decade that there seems to be an increase in the number of wireworms that are, or wireworm damage that seems to be seen or is perceived in PEI. And so back in 2009, we decided to go out and look at the click beetles, because where there's adults, there's bound to be potential, at least for the...
Attention please, Heather Moyes is getting ready to run for the gold medal. Heather Moyes is getting ready to go to the gold medal. If anybody would like to come join and cheer with us, you're welcome to do so. Big screen in the lobby. Thank you.
I'll just close my eyes for the next minute and a half, and when I open them up, you'll be all back, right? Yeah. Anyway, so we decided to do this click beetle survey just to get baseline information as to where these click beetles were being found across the province, to kind of give an indication of where the potential is for these problems. And this was done within the department and with AFC between Christine Nerone and myself and Brian Beaton. Gotta be kidding me. Okay. So then in 2012, we repeated this study, and what we wanted to do at that point is to see if the problem, you know, if the numbers had increased, if the areas where we were finding them had expanded, and, you know, we kept the fields fairly similar.
Attention everyone, the conference has started.
Jeez. Okay. Anyways, so this here is a map of the click beetle survey. So what you have here is a picture of the island, and you'll see all the brown spots there, and basically that's all the agricultural land in PEI. And in 2009, we had 60 sites that we tried to spread out across the island, and you know, we were a little bit sparse up in the west area. And so when we came back in 2012, we added about 25 more sites to total 85. And we tried to go back to as many of the same fields as we could, and if we couldn't get to the same fields, at least close by or in the same area. So a couple of quick results out of this that we found over time is when you get kind of from that line, you know, up East Prince Way, you're not doing too badly. 2009, we had 8 sites there, but the only thing we really found was some native species. And as you were probably aware, the species that we're really concerned with is the Agriotis, or the Agriotis spatata specifically. So that's the AS on the screen there. There are some natives that can cause damage, but the ones we're really concerned about right now are the AS species. So when we moved to 2012, you can see we found some Agriotis spatata, and the native species did increase, but even at 19 sites over an increased catching period, we're not seeing a lot of numbers there. So there is potential for, you know, wireworms pests to develop there, but we're not seeing a big issue at that point. Now when we go to the other side of the island, we go far east, we're seeing something similar. We had 2009 12 sites up that way, and we did find some spermata, but only 45 over a period of a month, and some native species. When we increased that that's supposed to be 2012, we had 13 sites, and although we doubled the number of spatata, we still only found 75 spatatas, 77, over those 13 sites, and that was over almost a 2-month period at that point. So really the numbers are still quite low, but the potential is there that, there's click beetles, so there could be wireworms. What was really a big concern was the part in the middle, which as you can see is quite a large part of PEI, where we really, when you looked at the numbers from 2009 to 2012, we had anywhere between a 40 to up to a 50-fold increase in the number of click beetles that we were collecting in those traps. So that's a big concern. Now, research doesn't necessarily correlate the number of wireworms to the number of click beetles that we're finding. However, the fact that we're finding that much more really makes me concerned. And this is a table from Christine Nerona that just kind of shows from 2009 to 2012, just to point out a few things, if I can find my dot here. Right there. No. All right. So if you look at the bottom of the table, what I really want you to notice is this is the number, the number of samples that had this number of insects in it. And you can see in 2009, there wasn't a lot that had large populations, but as we moved to 2012, especially in Queens County here, we had significantly more large number of traps. So we're seeing an increase. So far, that's the click beetles, and some of this information we presented there at the Wireworm Information Day, but just to review it again for those of you who may not have been there, when we looked, we were talking before Christmas, and again, we're getting this perception that there's increased damage happening across the island. So the Wireworm Research Working Group wanted to do kind of a survey to get an idea of what kind of incidents was happening across PEI, and follow that up with some more in-depth conversation as to what to the extent of the wireworm damage. So it was sent out November 28th to everybody in the potato that has emails linked to the PEI Potato Board, through the Department of Agriculture, to the Hort Association, as well as communicated through the Federation's newsletter and others. Gave everyone an opportunity to come in and participate in the survey, and we expect that about 750 people would have been exposed to the survey. So when we got the results over Christmas, we then took those numbers and followed up some conversations afterwards to get some more detail. So we had 155 responses, which we think is a pretty good response for a survey. About 20% of the people that we anticipated would see it responded to the survey. And the first question, of course, was, did you experience loss from wireworms in 2013? And of this, 55% of them said they did experience loss. Okay, so 86 of those people. So then, of course, the next question is, well, what crops did you experience it in? And you can see we have a huge range of crops there. We have our grain crops, our corn crops, our soybean crops, our pumpkins even, rutabagas, cabbage, carrots. The bulk of the responses were from potatoes, but you can see we have quite a crosscut from the agricultural industry there. So we followed this up with, was this crop loss from wireworms more severe than previous years? So of those 86 people who said they had loss, 71 decided to continue with the survey and answer this question. And 75% of those people said that they had experienced worse loss in 2013 than they did in other years. Okay, so of those 71 that had further loss, 63% of them, or 54, said that we could give them a call and see what's going on. So based on that, we had about 87% of those were potato growers, so we worked around that as far as who got the calls in the short amount of time we had, and contacted 31 growers. So, and the contact was done by the PEI Potato Board, I should mention. So the questions that were asked was, what community did you experience the damage in? What level of damage did you experience? And we categorized this as saying trace to 2% was minor, 2% to 10% damage was major, or moderate, and anything higher than 10% was considered major damage. And also, when did you first experience this damage. So out of this, we plotted this information on a map of PEI, and we found the results to be pretty interesting, actually, more interesting than we kind of anticipated initially. So the areas that had major damage, where people said they experienced communities major damage, you can see are kind of on that south shore where we normally expect it to be, around that Connell area there, and also where we're seeing it now up towards the Summerside area. Places that said they may have, some growers said they had major, some said moderate, minor, just outside those areas. So you can see it's kind of building around there, moving out. Moderate areas, again, you can see that expansion occurring outside of those major areas. Minor areas and moderate areas, there's a little bit up there. But really, when we get down to the minor areas, it's kind of scary to see that it's all across the province, and there's a lot of it. A lot of communities are now identifying minor issues with wireworm. So then the question becomes, when did you first experience it? Have you been having this issue for a long time, or is this relatively new? Because that's been the scary part. We're hearing from growers that wireworm's moving at about a half a mile a year down the road. That's kind of the perception that I'm hearing. So underneath, if you can see there, those are the major, just keep in mind that the major areas that are experiencing damage are the red areas. Okay, so that's kind of phased back so that you can see when the damage is being identified. So 2000 was the first year that growers saw their first major damage. And you can see that's kind of down on that south shore, which is where we're familiar with it having happened. 2001 kind of expanding from there. 2005 kind of hops the pond a little bit there across Hillsborough there, and keeps expanding outwards. 2006 again. 2007 getting wider. 2008 wider and broader. 2009, and this is when our first click beetle survey happened. And I want you to notice here, remember that major area outside Summerside? Still no damage identified in that area for the first time, and yet we've got major issues there. But by 2010, it did occur. 2012, and what's scary to me is 2013 is when people are identifying that they saw damage for the first time, and you can see there's a lot of those dots all across the island. So just as the follow-up questions as to what's being implemented, and of course this was geared towards potato growers because 87% of them were who we call using thiamine, as only potato growers can use it. 48% of them said they were using thiamine. Most popular rotation, potato grain hay, but of course people who are experiencing some of the worst damage are starting to substitute out that forage and looking at brown mustard, which when we followed up with this question, 30% of those growers that were talked to said that they are either currently using or will be using the 2014 brown mustard buckwheat in rotation. Okay, so we have a wireworm issue. We know that. Brief history as to how it, we've got the PEI Wireworm Working Group, and it kind of started back in 2011. That's when it really kind of came to the forefront with Minister McIsaac. We'd heard for years, but all of a sudden it really seemed to be ramping up around that time, which we saw on the map as well there as far as the areas that were getting heavier and heavier damage. And so he brought it to the floor of the legislator and said that something needs to be done about this representing his growers. And so Minister Webster asked for all the interested parties to come together and have a meeting, and out of this a subgroup was formed, which was the Wireworm Research Working Group, which includes everyone listed here from the department, potato board.
Attention everyone, Heather Moyes races next. Heather Moyes races next.
Okay. The Agri Alliance Cavendish, we've recently added a delegate from PMRA and the Horde Association in Canada. Okay, so what's integral to this group is our three researchers, Bob Vernon, Ted Kavaluk, and Christine Nerona, who are all the leading researchers in the world on wireworm, actually. So we're very lucky to have them here in Canada, and they have been designing all the activities as far as moving ahead with what we're researching. So one of the things that the Wireworm Research Group does, among other things, they help to support the researchers to make sure that these activities get funded and we can get this work done, but they also put on this Wireworm Information Day on February 4th. How many people attended that? that are in this room. Yeah, see, most of you were there, right? There was like 250 people there, so some of this is probably repetitive. At this point, it's probably less repetitive, hopefully. So on the agenda, you know, we invited Bob Vernon to come down and speak to us. We also had Ted Laboon from Syngenta Crops, Syngenta Canada. There she goes. And as well as our local researchers here. So just to give you a synopsis of that day, in case you weren't present, Brian Meaton started out the day and talked about wireworm situation around the world in Canada. And really, the message there is we're not alone. There are a lot of issues across the world where people are dealing with wireworms. The issue we have here is that we probably have the worst issue in the world. And this is being confirmed by our research scientists. And that makes us special, but not necessarily in a good way. Ted Laboon talked, and he talked about the impacts of the wireworms that they're seeing in Western Canada. Now, he talked about how the prairie growers are also experiencing devastating losses, right? And this was one of his slides showing some of the damage that they're experiencing even after replant. And the concern there being the fact that, you know, guys are looking to retire and sell their land, but it's hard to sell land if it's infested with wireworms, right? And so they're looking for solutions as well. They've got different species than us that they're dealing with, but they still are experiencing severe loss out there. They're using management strategies as one of the messages he talked about, such as scouting to identify where there are issues, trying to use crop rotations. Like, I don't know why. Anyways, what'll be really interesting is in about a minute and a half from now, whether we hear more cheers or it goes silent out there, because then we'll know how the Americans did. And then, of course, they're using seed treatment because what they are finding is that the seed treatments they do have available are having some effect on their species, where out here, you know, it's not working as strongly. Okay, and then we had Dr. Bob Vernon, and for me, I found him very interesting. He was a very good communicator, was able to really put good information out there that, you know, helped us understand wireworms better. And he talked about, you know, specifically about the species behave differently from one another, so it's really important that we identify what species we have as opposed to other areas. And understanding the biology of those wireworms being key to controlling those strategies, so we know where to hit them when they're weak and how they react, right? They're all going to react to different climates, they have different life cycles. Unfortunately, the buggers we're dealing with seem to be resistant, like they are tough. You know, you can starve them, they're not going to die. You can freeze them, they're not going to die. We're throwing everything at them and they just don't seem to want to die. So his message, unfortunately, is that it is going to get worse before it gets better. But he did offer us hope in some of the research that he and Christine and Todd are all working on as far as strategies and possible solutions down the road. So the reason he thinks that it's not going to get better in the that didn't sound good. The reason he thinks that it's not going to get better in the near future is the fact that we do have multiple species involved. Oh my God. This is killing me. We do have multiple species involved, right? And so it's not like we're just going after spitatter. Oh, that sounded positive. We do have multiple species. I got to get past this sentence. Okay. You understand that there's multiple species involved. We have lots of grassy breeding grounds, right? The click beetles are tending to breed in the borders and then moving into the fields, and we've got lots of those areas around. Our small field sizes aren't really helping us here. I wish I would just get it over with. Like, our small fields aren't really helping us either because it's easier for them to invade the field, right? It's not like they're just invading the border. They can actually get right across the field. We have the old chemistries which are working off. It used to be, you know, the problem with some of those old chemistries, it was their persistency that made them a real threat to the environment and to our health. But the benefit of that is that they really controlled those wireworms. They're now wearing off, and so that's why we're not getting as much effect as some, you know, methionine and among other things that we used to. Lindane is no longer available, and that was really key to killing wireworms. Cereal crops are commonly used, which is where they like to breed. You might as well tell us, did they do it? Is it a gold or a silver?
It's a gold.
Hey! There you go. Okay. Thank you. We also have a reduction in foliar spray, insecticide sprays, which is reducing the impact we're having on the adult forms. And then we have the neonics, which are not killing. We use them, and they're systemic, and they're great for lots of things, but they're not having the impact on the neonates or the resident wireworms in the form of killing them. Okay, so we followed the afternoon with presentations by all of our scientists, and I'm not going to get into what the presentations, because the majority of you have seen them, but for those of you who haven't, or even those of you who want a refresher, the potato board is going to be putting them up on YouTube. They'll be attaching them to their website, so you'll be able to go back and view this information at any time. I believe we'll have our link on our website as well, so you can also find it there. But there's lots of good information. And also, I don't want to give Joanne's talk away, too, because I'm sure she's just eager to get up here and do some chatting herself. The takeaway, really, I guess, if there's a message for growers who are concerned about wireworm, and what Bob said a number of times, is, scout your fields using both bait and pheromone traps, right? Pheromones, you can buy Agriotis spirtata pheromones from a company out in BC. They're $2.25 a lure. They only get the males, of course, but it will give you an idea if you put them out in your field about that peak time to see if they're emerging from your field, which, of course, if they're emerging from you want to look at. You want to put them in a field that was in grain 4 years ago, right? Because that's probably when they laid their eggs, and so they'll be emerging about this time from those fields. So if you put the lures in those fields and see if they're emerging, if they are, then that's a good heads up that you're going to have some issues. And then of course bait traps, just to help you keep an eye on if there's potential for problems as well. Using brown mustard or buckwheat in your rotation. Christine's work is been showing good results with that, so there's going to be more work done into that to see the best way of managing that. And then as well, just keeping up to date on developing wireworm research. There's constantly things being done, and I'm sure that as we find information, you'll be the first to hear it, because anything that's successful will definitely be shouted loud and clear. As far as a product update, just to give you a quick update, this is, I believe, my last slide. As you know, Thymit is currently set to be phased out 2015, 2015. We are going to be asking for an extension on this and working on this. There's a group of us that will be having a discussion tomorrow that has representatives from industry and growers and government from across Canada, and of course the company itself. Engaged representing ANVAC to try and figure out a plan forward to convince PEI to allow an extension. We know that Titan is available. We know it works out west, but we know that it is not effective out here with our wireworm species that we're dealing with. Clopyrifos, it doesn't have an MRL. The problem too is, we've got a number of vegetable growers that are using clopyrifos for other things, and they're still experiencing wireworm damage, so not a great control there. And then, of course, everybody's wondering about capture. What's the latest on capture by fenthrine? We know it's been submitted to PEI for registration for in-furrow treatment for wireworms on potatoes. The decision is pending. We understand that the studies were favorable as far as soil dissipation studies, which is what the decision was hinging on. We hope to have information updated in the next week, as we have some big calls coming up for the transition strategies. And hopefully we'll have more information for you soon, but we really need to press on PEI the importance of getting this available this year so that growers have access to it, and also so that we have time to experiment with it before the time it is taken off the market. That's the end of me. I'll pass it over to Joanne, and she's going to give you some more information on the work she's been doing at Wireworms.
Good evening, everyone. Or good evening, listen to me. Afternoon. I'm all confused here. So, can everyone hear me? Everyone's spread out. Okay. So my name is Joanne Driscoll. I work with the Horticultural Association. I've been with them now actually 30 years. So when we, in the vegetable world, I may repeat some of what Shauna has said, but we have no chemical control for the wireworm at all, whether it be Thymit or what have you. And we have seen the damage increase in our fields over the last decade, from 2000 to 2010, in our rutabaga and carrot crops in particular. So we went through our historical data, and what we found was the damage was increasing Our carrot seeding dates were actually moving ahead, so instead of the end of May, we were pushing them more into June. We also saw that we were decreasing our general sprays where we were going after the rust fly, the supposed carrot weevils, so those types of things. So we decreased those sprays. And also our products, we kept losing chemical control products that we were able to use. So we sort of suspect that what we did was we actually let the click beetle population build up in our fields, which is why we saw the increase in damage. So, and in the fresh market world, you have to remember that when we're looking at a carrot or a rutabaga, one hole makes it unmarketable. Okay? We don't have any peeling process, that sort of thing. So if we have the hole, it's unmarketable. In cabbage, we saw a massive increase in 2009. And what it was actually doing was the wireworm was going after the transplants, the young transplants when they were set. Spring population was coming up, and they were riddling the plug itself that's in the ground. And it caused major losses as far as you had in here in the drill, where there should be cabbage plants, there isn't. So they were just coming up, mass production, mass populations, and just waving at our plants. So they were causing a loss in stand, which meant we had to go in and replant, which increased your cost. And also because of that, we were having uneven yield. We harvest by hand, so we were having to go in the field multiple times to get a crop off the field, which increased our cost of production. And as Sean had mentioned, we do use a chlorspan drench. What's the real word? Chlorpyrifos. So we do use that in our transplant production, and we are not seeing any control. We use it as a drench in our rutabagas, not seeing any control. So just to sort of put that out there for you. So this all led to our study in 2011. We were sort of getting desperate. We don't know what to do. We worked with Dr. Christine Arona. It was fantastic. And what we wanted to do was come up with a two-pronged approach, going both after the click and after the larvae of the wireworm. So our study involved, we had 3 parts. So we used, when we were looking at the click beetles themselves, we were doing efficacy trials. I won't get into that. That's actually Christine and Rona did that data. We sort of had different results, varying results. Some products gave us no control. We used registered products actually for our commodities as well. So we were using Admire, Ambush, Malabine, I think we used in there. We were just trying almost anything in different spectrums to see if we could see if we were even able to kill the click beetle. Admire did give us the best control as a spray in lab studies. So we're sort of concerned about when we go out, you're going to hit and miss. How do you know if you're actually spraying when the beetles are there? We also did adult monitoring. So that started in the beginning because we were doing the efficacy trials. So we were just collecting beetles for Christine to put into her lab studies. As time went on, 2013, that we really have to get a handle on what's going on here. So we put out weather stations and intensified our search for this beetle. The second part of it is the crop rotation. Don't this thing is finicky. Our second part was the crop rotation. So we, as I said, we had no chemical control. So we had to look at the crop rotation into this, okay? So from Christine's studies in 2009, we decided to use the buckwheat and the brown mustard versus our conventional crops. So we used 2-year rotations of brown mustard buckwheat and also 1-year rotations. Then this also involved each year of the rotational crop. It was a double seed. Our rotational crops were barley, underseeded with clover. We had a timothy site, and we also had a wheat followed by rye site. Along with this, we were reading data from other areas, and they were saying that we would see a negative response to yield if we were using a brown mustard buckwheat. So we also thought we better look at the effect on the various crops. So the adult click beetle, we started collecting beetles right off the bat, and we set the traps out in April 22nd. We had 7 traps along the perimeter. We used one of our major field sites that had a high population back in 2009. The field was plowed in fall and disked in the spring, and then we put our traps out, and we had transplanted cut up cabbage in this field. So, as you can see from the catches, so this here is from the 7 traps, the total traps that we found. Let's see if I can do this right. Our first catch came in on May 9th, is it? And then we went in from, okay, sorry, I didn't put that angle. I have to go from sheets, sorry. So May 22nd, we started increasing right off the bat May 1st. May 22nd, we had 185. And then on June 17th, we went all the way up to 570 beetles. So it just kept increasing astronomically. Our first catch, the soil temperature was 8 degrees. And then it steadied off after that. So August 20th was our last catch. And from August 20th all the way to October, we didn't catch any beetles in our family traps. So remember, we're looking at beetles here. So one thing I want to note is, if you see this little triangle here, that's 2012. And we actually, at that date, found 247. So we can't go in on a calendar. We don't believe you can go in on a calendar to spray for this clay beetle. We really have to be monitoring what's happening as far as degree day or the accumulation of your temperature and your soil temperature. So we hope to do further work in this area starting this spring. So the wireworms, as I was saying with cabbage, it's compounded when we do no transplants. Depending on the population, if there's 1 or 2 wireworms, we seem to be okay. But when you have heavy infestations like this, it just destroys the plants. Something we used to experience with the cabbage root and egg. We seem to have overcome that, so we have to overcome the wireworm. So when we evaluated these, I gotta stop saying so, sorry about that. Notice I said that 20 million times. With our cabbage transplants, what we were looking at was the number of wireworms in the actual plants, the total number per plant, as well as the number of plants with wireworms. So once the plant was transplanted, we went in and during plant establishment, once the plant gets old enough, we're fine, we don't have to worry about it. So we went in with our first sampling date on May 22nd, and right off the bat, we found wireworms in all plots. It started to level off on the 29th. They started to drop, sorry, not level off. So our highest counts were found in the 1-year treatments. You can see 2.25 and 2.31 per plant, per 10 plants, sorry. And our best control was with the 2-year buckwheat. So this is early transplanted cabbage. This is a better visual you can see there. So the 2-year buckwheat gave us our best control. The highest was in the winter. When we move into rutabaga, we had one site here with 4 replicants of each of the treatments. We harvested on November 9th, and we did harvest assessments for both, first of all, for yield, ignoring the wireworm, and then we also did the wireworm damage. So this table is showing you the percent roots that were damaged at harvest from wireworm. Our best results were the 2-year brown mustard. There was 26% damage. But look at your conventional crop. The conventional crop. So, in all plots across the treatment, 47.8% damage. Therefore, half their crop is gone. All of them gave better control versus the conventional control, but our best was the brown mustard 2 years. For the carrot damage, we did the same thing. And here we were looking at the damage by number, as well as the number of carrot roots damaged, as well as the number by weight. And they followed the same trend for each treatment. Our best results was the 1-year brown mustard on this scenario. The same trend, though, is the highest damage was reported in the conventional crop. So all treatments work better than the conventional crop rotations. As far as crop response, we sort of differed from the rest of the research that we were looking at in the vegetable crops. There was no statistical difference when it comes to crop response. They all followed the same trend. Yields were still there, so that was very encouraging for us as far as putting carrots in to make sure that we weren't going to lose the nutrient. So in conclusion, we found that, well, early transplanted cabbage, the 2-year buckwheat, did best control. The rutabaga, it was the 2-year brown mustard. For the carrot fall harvest, the 1-year brown mustard. Carrot and rutabaga, the similar trend was the crop rotation. The conventional crop rotation resulted in the higher damage. So all rotations were better than our conventional. And remember, this is 3 sites on PEI, so 3 different farms. Next steps, we want to look at efficacy trials. We want to continue there and see if there's some products that we can get for the click beetle, along with getting some degree day information on the click beetle, so that we can time our pheromones going out, so we can monitor what's going on in these fields, along with their movement. How are they moving, where are they moving from? And we also would like to look at some cropping in regards to attracting and counting the click beetle. There were many people helped us out. Scott was here, and it's a team effort. I can't thank everyone enough, but it was a lot of hard work, and hopefully when we all work together, we have Christine, Shauna, everyone, we can come up with some strategies to combat this evil beast. So, thank you.